Please take a moment and exhale and wait. Exhale and wait. And find the earliest moment that you can sense the beginning of your inhalation. And as your inhalation comes into you, take a moment and observe how it flowers within you, the way the movement organizes within your chest. Which side feels more? As your abdomen is engaged in the breath of the inhalation, is there a difference between one side and the other that you can sense? As you inhale, what happens to the space between your lower ribs and the floor? Is your lower back lifted from the floor, or does it expand backwards toward the floor? As you inhale, can you sense the difference between how your ribs that are in contact with the floor on the right and your ribs that are in contact with the floor to the left? Which side of your back seems to participate or to be more engaged with the floor as you make this inhalation? Which side expands more and you can sense the floor more through your own experience, through your own sensing, through the contact, the pressure, the kinesthetic sense? Please bend your knees and bring your feet to standing. And you notice as you bring your feet to standing, whether your feet land on the floor in such a way that you're prepared to either lengthen your legs, to lift your legs, or to lift your pelvis. Now please make the movement once or twice to lift your pelvis a little bit. Again, observing as you lift whether one foot is more secure, more stable, that you rely on one leg more than the other, that you sense as you make the movement to lift, that you sense one side of your back providing more of a basis to move, which shoulder begins to engage more with the floor as you lift. Lift your pelvis and leave it in the air for a moment. And then please make the movement in such a way that you can rotate the right side of your pelvis down as if to place it on the floor beneath you. So you keep your pelvis lifted and you rotate your spine in such a way that as if to place the outer part of the right side of your pelvis on the floor beneath you. So that you're turning your pelvis so that the right side of your pelvis. Now it means that it's not such a movement that your knees fall to the right or left. It means that your knees stay more or less directed to the ceiling, so that this is something that's taking place in the way that you're organizing the movement in your hip joints. Something moves down and the other stays more or less stable. Leave it, please, and rest for a moment. Come back again, please. Lift your pelvis. Please lower the other side, means your left side. It's as if to rotate. It doesn't mean that your legs go right or left. It doesn't mean that the weight shifts so much between one foot and the other. It means that more or less there's an equality between your feet and you're rotating your pelvis so that the left side of your pelvis rotates down as the right side lifts. And rotate one side down and bring it back, and then rotate the other side down. And after several movements, as one goes down, the other goes up. Up meaning towards the space, one goes forward and one goes back is actually a more accurate way to say it. So one of these years, after 40 years of teaching this, I'll finally figure out how to language these lessons. Moshe made the mistakes himself at times. Very nice. Leave it again, please, and rest. And having made this movement several times of finding this support and this ability to rotate your pelvis relative to your spine and resting on your shoulders, notice what's happened to the internal space, that as you inhale now, the sensation of your breath coming, so you exhale and wait, and just see if you have the same tension with your lower back and the floor of your pelvis and your abdomen that you might have had in the beginning. Do you remember the lesson from where you invite the movement to expand the floor of your pelvis and lift to lengthen yourself up and through? Do you remember the story about the little Chinese lady that I met who was teaching? She was a treasure of the Beijing opera, and this internal sense that she had of being able to make circular movements and internal lengthening movements that were the origin of her Tai Chi. That internally this movement took place, and the movement that you saw was the external representation of what had taken place internally. Please bend your knees and stand your feet again. Please raise your pelvis. How do you raise? Do you increase the weight in your feet? Does the lifting your pelvis mean that your knees go forward, that you move your pelvis towards your knees? Or does it mean for you that you lift in such a way that you invite way up in your spine between your scapula some way of turning and lifting and engaging so that you lift away from the floor and so that you know the difference. Now with your pelvis lifted a little bit, will you please glide your pelvis? You think of the femoral heads, or you think of the acetabulum, or you think that where your hip joints join, and you slide your pelvis in the purest movement that you can make, right and left. And you watch as you make this movement. Watch as you make this movement. How do your feet participate with the floor? As you go to the right, in what direction does your right foot turn? As you go to the left, as you go to the right, in what direction does your left foot move? So as you make the movement with your pelvis to the right, what happens with your knees? So you can notice whether or not, as you go to the right, you turn to the outside edge of your right foot and the inside edge of your left foot. What do you experience when you go to the left? What do you do? Again, it's not a question of what's right or wrong. It's a question, first and foremost, of really knowing how to ask questions. When I make this movement, what internal assumptions do I make? So that you can see that as you glide your pelvis right and left, in what way are your knees moving? And in what way are you tracking or moving your feet over the floor? Now, please, for a moment, change this. For the most part, most of you, not everyone, but for the most part, most of you made this movement. As your knees went to the right, you rolled your feet to the right, and your inner arch went to the floor of your left foot, went to the floor, and as you went to the left, you rolled to the outer part of your left foot and the inner part of your right foot. Now, please find for yourself this sensation of the fourth metatarsal, and please make the movement that as you go to the right, it's not that you roll it in, it's that you roll away from your left foot. Your knee stays more or less organized over your foot. You come away from the left. You come away from the outer edge of the left foot. And as you go to the left, you come away from the outer edge of the right foot. So instead of rolling in, that you maintain a tone evenly distributed within yourself. You can watch that if you roll your knees a little right and left, there's a subtle moment of sagging. There's a moment and you make the movement and you lift. How can you make the movement across yourself in such a way that you keep the tone evenly distributed? The only way that we know, as we've already mentioned, is whether or not you can keep an even and opposite counterbalance. So you have to find some way of coming away from one foot and away from the other foot without falling. Very nice. Leave it again and rest. Please bend your knees and stand your feet again. And interlace your fingers behind your head. and raise your pelvis. And as you make the movement of taking your pelvis right and left, discover within yourself, which way would your head go? So when you have your pelvis lifted and you're around a pivoting point, that as you take your pelvis to the right, will you pivot? In what direction will you make the movement of your head? It's to slide it so that your head and your nose stays directed to the ceiling, so that you find out whether or not you're going to slide your head opposite the direction that your pelvis moves. So you can lift your head just a little bit so that you can sense. And for the moment, please make it so that as your pelvis goes to the right, that your head goes to the left. And as your pelvis goes to the left, your head to the right, so that you have the relationship such that your head and your pelvis are moving opposite. It's pivoting around a point, isn't it? And the way you generate this movement has a lot to do with how it is that you organize your feet for making the movement. You can play with this if you want to find the difference for yourself of rolling your knees right and left, rolling the inner edge to the outer edge of your foot right and left, and sense what that does for the movement and the sense of freedom within yourself. And then you can come back and have the sensation of creating this equal and opposite kind of pressure, that something as you move one way that you come away from your foot, away from the edge of your foot, the points of support within your foot. Please leave that. Please bend your knees and stand your feet. Please interlace your fingers behind your head, perhaps non-habitually if you'd like, for a moment. And please make the movement again once or twice in such a way that your pelvis goes one way and your head goes the other. Notice how the support that's given, whether you continuously find the support through your legs or whether there's a kind of a rolling, it's a different kind of support. Now, please make it so that you keep your head absolutely still, that you take your pelvis right and left, but your head stays still. It's not so easy and it's not really possible, but you have the sense that you make it so that your head, your spine moves under your head. Now please make it so that as you move your pelvis to the right, that you move your head to the right. And as you move your pelvis to the left, it means that your head moves to the left. Now, this is a funny kind of a movement because it's very easy to delude ourselves that that's what we're doing. It means that your pelvis is going to stay to the left of the center line as your head moves to the left of the center line. And it means your head is going to move to the right of the center line and your pelvis will move to the right of the center line. So it's not taking your pelvis right and left. It means that more or less your pelvis is laterally flexing, laterally bending. And I found this movement, when I first made this movement, to be almost impossible. Of course, that was many, many years ago. But you have to be careful that you're not taking your pelvis to the left when your head is going to the right. It means to the left and the left and the right and the right. The right side of your pelvis goes, it's like bringing the right side of your head and the right side of your pelvis together on the right, and the left side of your head and the left side of your pelvis together on the left. But your pelvis, your sacrum, doesn't cross the center line. Please leave it. Bend your knees and stand your feet and find out now how it is to lift your pelvis. Just sense, can you within yourself make it so that you understand clearly how to find the points of support, the subtle way that your ankle changes, the way that you draw the cuboid. Initiate the movement from your own experience now of having found the cuboid, of turning the cuboid, not outwardly too far to the side. It's how do you turn the cuboid so that it invites your ankle, it invites your under the talus, how it invites the talus to come up and to turn in the way that the tibia and the way that the fibula twist, spiral underneath the knee, and the way that the knee then turns and the femoral head turns up and in. Invite the lifting by how it is that you lift your cuboid into yourself, up and in. Very nice. Leave it again, please, and rest. Even if you can locate this, the idea of the cuboid, and I know in the past that we haven't historically utilized these kinds of anatomical terms so much, but I think it's important for us to actually have a specificity in the way that we can make these engagements. It's a location, it's a guidepost. It's not necessarily, we may not even be so perfectly accurate, but it gives a guidepost into what it's like to actually have these movements come from underneath up and into us. Now, please make a movement to slide your right arm, your right leg to the right and back. Without, no, it's not lifting. Slide your right leg to the right and back. It's very interesting as you slide your right leg to the right and back. You listen to the way that your pelvis rests on the floor when your leg is gone to the right. Please take a moment and slide your left leg to the left and back. If you pay attention, some of you will find that there's a real difference between sliding to the left or sliding to the right. Please place your right hand behind your head and slide your head to the right as you slide your left leg to the left. And again, notice some of you will find that this pivots very nicely. You find some place that you pivot around, perhaps a specific point that you make a pivoting movement around. Please change it and place your left hand behind your head and slide your head to the left as you slide your right leg to the right. Again, noticing this pivoting movement. Leave it and rest. As you slide your right leg to the right, will you please make an arc with your left hand against the floor to bring your left arm overhead. As you slide your right leg to the right, you arc your left hand in an arc overhead. And as you slide your left leg to the left, please swing your right arm in an arc. Please place your left hand behind your head. And as you slide your left leg to the left, please slide your head to the left. And make this arc with your right arm. And come back. So as you make this movement, you make this arc, your head to the left and your leg to the left, with your right arm arcing upward. And as you make this movement, roll to your stomach. So here we again have the conundrum of the baby rolling. Yes. And of course, roll back. In such a way that there's no particular point of pressure with your heel. That this whole movement is arced, is inquired by how you find the support through yourself so that you don't need to press away with your heel or press away with your arm. Something counterbalances. Again, leave it in rest for a moment. And now take a moment and slide and place your right hand behind your head. And as you slide your elbow and your head to the right, you slide your right leg to the right, and you arc your left arm overhead, and you listen within yourself as to how this is experienced until it brings you to the point of rolling. Now please leave it for a moment. Rest again. Place both hands behind your head. Place both hands behind your head. Slide your left leg to the left and roll to your stomach in such a way that when you roll to your stomach, that your elbows don't touch the floor. It's your left leg to the left. Something has to move so far forward that your head and your feet almost don't have engagement with the floor. Please change for a moment. Slide your hands to the right and through your right leg to the right. And turn yourself to your stomach. Some of you will find the answer. It's one of these Feldenkrais conundrums. It really is a conundrum, this lesson. Do you find yourself rolling over the side that your right leg and right elbow and your head are going to? Do you roll over the right side or the opposite side? What determines for you? Where's the balance and the counterbalance? If your elbows are touching the floor, you might not have figured it out. Please lie on your back. Interlace your fingers behind your head. Bring your knees into the air in such a way that your feet are in the air. Your fingers behind your head. Please roll to your stomach. It means do what you need to do with the way that you're going to scissor your legs. Roll to your stomach in such a way that you can keep your elbows off the floor and come back. You can see that there's a way in which you have to protrude something, your hip joints, the lower part of your abdomen, so that something has a surface that you can roll over. And as you roll to your stomach, your knees and your arms go apart, and as you roll to your back, your elbows and your knees come together. All right, please leave it for a moment. Place your left hand behind your head. As you take your head to the left and your left leg to the left, swing your right arm in an arc and find out in which direction do you roll to your stomach. Something within you is determining which direction you're going to roll. Come back again and watch the first part of the movement. As you slide your elbow to the left and your head to the left, you find out in what direction does your pelvis move? Does it fall in the direction that your leg and elbow are going, or does it lift? It's a funny thing. As you take your elbow to the left and you take your left foot to the left, you find out as you make the movement whether your pelvis lifts away from the floor or falls into the floor. Leave that. Don't go too far. Don't go too far. Easy, easy, easy. Change hands. Take a moment and explore. As you take your elbow to the right and your leg to the right, your arm swinging an arc, in what direction do you find your pelvis rolling? Does it turn into the floor or does it turn away from the floor? Which way do you sense turning? Okay. Good. Please leave that for a moment and let's watch this conundrum. Come around, please. I always get to have such lovely people in the middle of their conundrum. You're right in the middle of this wonderful conundrum, aren't you? It's quite a conundrum, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So just for the moment, before you, let's not do that. Let's just take a moment and let you be in the conundrum, okay? And we'll let the group, so come around, stand around, and just for a moment. So let's go one way, and then we'll go the other way. It's very interesting. So you place your left hand behind your head, and you slide your left leg to the left. And as your elbow comes to the left, and you keep this movement going until what happens? In which way will you go onto your stomach now? That's right. So you end up going to your stomach to the opposite side. Yeah, something is the counterbalance. So you keep protruding. So we watch. As she makes the movement, you see. Now you watch. Right there. What did her hip joint do? Lifted. Yeah? So in this moment, she began to have a different set of possibilities. Now let's watch what she does on the other side. Because as she makes the movement, as she takes her head to the left, and where did her hip joint go? Where is it? Down. What in the hell's with that? Now, some of you never quite found this. You kept going like the baby who's rolled over in such a way that their elbow and their knees are in the way, and then they had to roll over, the difficulty. Yeah. So you can see, well, there it is. Now she has this very first movement. Now her hip joint is dropping down into the ground. And so what indication does that give her as to which way to roll? It gives her the indication that she's going to roll in the direction that her pelvis is falling. So if we watch to one side and then the other, when we put the left hand, and we start to watch the movement, and she makes the movement, and we start to see that, oh, there comes another relationship, and that gives her another way, because where's the counterbalance? You can see that this is behind there, her head is behind here, and she's arched her pelvis forward, and he's arched her back forward, so that she now has a place that if she wanted to, she could swing, and she could lift her head up onto the horizon. There we go. And then she could turn around and swing back. That's right. And you can see that this is all done with counterbalance as she makes the movement. Okay. So some of you for the moment, go ahead and just make the movement. Huh? You didn't have the two different options for you, right? So we're going to look at several different people, because if we watch either way, because you do it the same both ways, more or less. So right there, where did she go? She began immediately to fall, and so you watch which way, how she goes, and what's her strategy now to make it so that she rolls. But now she didn't meet the criterion, because there's her elbow touching the floor, right? So somehow the idea of saying, what do I do? My elbow touched the floor. The constraint is, how do I make this movement without my elbow touching the floor? And yet somehow we can't quite hear it. Yeah. Yeah. And she can't reorganize it because it's so implicit within. Yeah. So let's watch the other way, just for the moment. Yeah. There she goes. See, she rolls towards the leg as it goes. Yeah. All right. So now let's watch you. Come on, do it in the middle. So we do it in the middle here, so everybody can. What do you see already? Now, she's cheating. She's cheating. This is done completely without having to press anything. Sequentially, she moves over the ground, and you see that she can make this movement in such a way that she can turn herself without her elbows touching the floor. Go to the other side. That's it. The other left. No, that's it. The left. That's it. So the moment that she starts, what did her hip do? It lifted. isn't it? Yeah. And as she makes the movement, so she could be in the place where she could roll herself with both hands to make this movement. So now make it with both hands. Go one way or the other. It doesn't make any difference. No, both hands, both hands. Slide one way or the other. There. Look how powerful. In order for her to make that arching movement, how powerful, and you can see how full her abdomen is, and you can see the weight of her abdomen moving forward in such a way that she could actually, you can see she's already over, isn't she? Where's the moment that she's gone over herself, that she's actually rolled under herself, hasn't she? Yeah. So she's making this movement in such a way that she's rolling back and under herself, as it looks like she's rolling over herself, but she's actually rolling under herself. Okay. So now, with this little bit of information, go back again and make another theory about how you'll do it. Study what it is that you do, because there must be something within yourself that has something. Does this relate to the way that you organize the femoral head in your pelvis? Is there some relationship that you have? Because in one way you make the movement just with one hand, not with both, just with one hand. Just explore for a moment. So it's an interesting conundrum to discover that the invitation is to actually roll opposite the direction that your elbow and legs are going. You have to slide your arm in an arc overhead so that your arm isn't in the way, so that when you can come over onto your stomach in such a way that one arm is long and you can lift your head up to see the horizon, or you can have your arm come under your chest. Again, another sort of baby crawling. But something that has to do again with this fundamental organization of the way that our femoral head engages in our pelvis. And some of you found that one side is very clearly different than the other. So no matter what you do, you keep wanting to turn your right hip inward. It's like it's a leg that's a foreign leg, isn't it? That's it. That's the way to explore it. That's it. Slide your leg to the right. There you go. All right, come around for a moment. Please stay. Come on. Do you have a preference as to which side you would like to play with? This side's really hard. Okay, good. We'll make the hard side work harder. No. Ah! Okay, so we can theorize. So give me a right leg. Give me a right skeletal leg. No, the left one. I'm sorry. Give me the left one. Yeah, the left. to the left. That, yeah, give me, is that the left? That's the left. Okay, that'll work. So we can theorize that as she makes this movement, if she makes this movement in such a way that her pelvis falls, go ahead and make the movement, come, put your left hand behind. So now, relative to her pelvis, what has her leg done? It's rotated inwardly, hasn't it? She's rolled her pelvis over her leg, hasn't she? Yeah? So if she's rolled her pelvis over her leg, she's not going to have within herself the ability to make this movement, to arc this forward, because there's just no place for it to go, is there? So now let's just take a moment. And as she makes this movement, and if I think again of the lesser trochanter, and I think again of the grand trochanter, and I think that as she begins this movement to slide, I invite her, as she slides, I invite her to find a different relationship. So I'm turning, it means I have to have a pretty good idea, and I have to have a pretty good idea of where this movement has to go if she's going to be able to roll over herself, don't I? I can't make this movement here and then start to turn her down there. Yeah. The direction that I'm offering this movement has to be such that it creates the greatest arc possible relative to her. Yeah. Because if she's going to roll over herself and make this movement, that arc has to be someplace within herself, that this arc here can be the place from which this can move back now, and this can move back so that she can roll and keep her head up as she goes. That's it. That's a hard work for many of us. It's not a hard work for her. Let's come in. You come in. Well, you can see that she has a fluidity and a power in her back that makes it possible. Let me get on the same side, okay? So that as she begins to make this movement, left hand behind, right hand arcs up. So she begins to make the movement. Go ahead. Now you see how much, look at the arc. Now, where's the point that she's actually rolling? What's actually, if I could make this movement and I could reach underneath her, where would I invite her to roll, have it roll back underneath her? Like a tire. No, not her pelvis. She's well above her pelvis as to where the highest point of the arc is. There's a powerful point that she's rolling over. This is rolling over and back and under as she makes the movement. And as she comes to lift here, now she finds that she's finding a point with her pubic bone, and then she can bring it back. Great. Okay? Go find a partner. It is higher. Where the arc is. Where the arc is and where you roll are different, yes. But you have to have enough activity way up here to create the arc. And then where you roll over is different. But that arc creates the counterweight. Yes. Yes. Right. If you have the arm in any place or the shoulders in any place, it's going to again interfere with finding the specific points from which you can make the movement. Yeah. All right. So do you have enough information to take a moment and play with a partner and play with the difference in the rolling, the beginning of the rolling? So as she rolls, if she makes the movement to roll, so for her she does this so naturally. Stop again. Or change hands. Change hands. That's it. That's right. As she makes the movement to roll, she's clearly, no, it means this leg and this leg. She's clearly not rolling. She's clearly not rolling. Wait, she's not rolling. Yeah? She's not rolling this side down to the ground. Yeah. Okay. That's right. All right, so we're playing again in another lesson that has this potential asymmetry within ourselves as to how we engage our pelvis, our leg to our pelvis relative to the potential we have for rolling, lifting up and through us. Yeah, and this lesson I always thought was great because it had such a great conundrum in it. As you make the movement of rolling to taking your arm and your leg apart, roll to your stomach. And then, of course, the question is really, and especially if you give the constraint in such a way that your elbow doesn't touch the floor, it gives you a constraint to actually begin to play with. So with a partner, 2 or 3 people together, just take a moment and help them find the source